State of AI. I think he's been doing it 15 or 20 years. It's a must-read report. It's about 300 pages long. We're not going to go through all that, but it really has some great sections in. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll do the home page just so people can see. It's. I think he's had the same format for. Where's my preview slideshow? Yeah. So State of the AI.
Paul, you muted yourself.
Really great set of analysis that Nathan and his team been doing it for years here. This is gets previewed by almost, I think, all the AI frontier labs and a whole bunch of things. So it really is becoming the, source of kind of at least truth or verified truth. He's got multiple sections in here: research, industry, politics, safety. I want to start on the research, tail end the research, and then go into industry because it's got some important stuff on there. We did this a year ago, and I'll put in a link later on, and it's really interesting. I went back and listened to our session on this a year ago, and we just started talking about agents. Tim, you were given a cautionary thing to agents, and we were all laughing that probably 12 months from now, agents would be something that would kind of passe, and it was a flash in the pan, and it was kind of the exact opposite here. Um, but let me just walk through each slide, and I'll say what it is, and people disagree or have comments. We can please let us know, raise your hand or speak up here. So one thing he noticed about was the open versus proprietary. He says a brief moment last year when the intelligence gap between open and closed seemed to have compressed. Then O1 dropped, and it widened significantly, and then DeepSeek R1 and O3 after that. So that was back in December where the reasoning models really dropped. But beside all that, though, we continue to see, at least he continues to see, that the closed source models continue to be at the very top of at least some of the benchmarks, although the gap with the open source remains close. AI pivots from the wrong side of history to line with American First AI. This is really OpenAI is coming out with their open source variant, GPT-OSS. At our conference a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about one of the customers in production, Blue Cross Blue Shield Michigan, is swapping out, and have swapped out many of the Llama models with OpenAI's open source model, OSS, and been very happy with it. Any folks online been using the open model from OpenAI by chance? Um, what we've seen, we've been talking on the news all the time that the open source models from China in the last 12 months continue to just dominate. And what many people thought were going to be a meta world in terms of open source a year ago has seen just absolute dominance by the top Chinese models. And I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if people are, certainly Zuckerberg spent, I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 billion on people in terms of comp and stuff, but it's not clear that they've got any models in the marketplace that the market's responding to. Gwen, why are researchers going Chinese? I think, well, let's skip through this. I'm going to skip through some of the research. I want to get to the industry stuff here. Sora 2, everyone talked about that, but certainly an impressive set of text-to-video capabilities here. I want to get to industry. Oh, the scaling models for genomics. So we talked a lot about the different vectors. So we've seen a lot of good progress in genomics, on proteins. AlphaFold 3, starting to work on the chemistry side. LLMs are professional yes men, and we trained them to be that way. So this kind of really being programmed to satisfy the user at all cost. Vision models, I'm going to skip through this. This was a paper that we highlighted back in June from NVIDIA and Georgia Tech talking about the power of small models, and that there's a whole bunch of reasons, both from cost and flexibility, to suggest that the small language models may be an avenue going for these multi-agent production systems here. Although there's been so much momentum on the large model side here, but certainly the plethora of small language models has really been validated and real this year. Let's skip this. MCP was, I think it just came out last year. Oh yeah, introduced by Anthropic in late 2024, and has really picked up quickly by many companies here. A bazillion agent frameworks. We get asked that every single week. Context windows, lifetime memory, AI conference capacity crisis. Top AI conferences are being overwhelmed by unprecedented number of submissions. So we've seen this a number of times where both in creative fields and the science fields, it's just and the job search is just an incredible number of submissions because it's gotten so much easier to create both research papers and short stories and job descriptions and job resumes. So on the industry side, rest in peace, artificial general intelligence, long live superintelligence. So the whole notion that artificial general intelligence was as smart as the human and superintelligence is smarter than that was certainly a term that's being used more. But like a lot of these things, no one knows exactly what it means, but it gets people going. Uh, Frontier costs continue to go up. I still have folks.
Yep, still there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, you know
yeah,
what they say, Paul, a trillion here, a trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
correct. I mean, I don't think a year ago, Tim, we would have thought that it'd be realistic trillions of dollars going to these things here, but it's just breathtaking the amount of money. Here's the Oracle AI $300 billion cloud deal. Was breathtaking. I think it shot up Oracle to 30 or 40%. So the whole infrastructure build out is breathtakingly large and way above, I think, expectations a year ago.
Yeah. And here's another big thing that caught my attention this week. Broadcom has now displaced Tesla in the Mag
Wow.
7. So chip companies have, Broadcom's now worth over, I think, almost $1 trillion, maybe over $1 trillion.
And I think that's because of the deal they did with OpenAI, right? Didn't OpenAI invest in or
Well,
do
it's
some?
part of it. I mean, they've just been doing deals with everybody, like every chip maker in the world has. Yeah.
Despite the 100 hours a week that many of the labs say their engineers are working, the absolute frontier labs remain contested by continuously leapfrogging one another. But at the end of the day, the two that remain out there most are OpenAI and DeepMind is one they're seeing out there. Days spent at the open source frontier, DeepSeek, 214 days with Meta way behind. More for less trends in capacity. The cost ratios are encouraging. Let's just continue to see an unbelievable cost to performance improvement here. Model release cadences and fundraising, just lots and lots of shipping. On average, Anthropic's launching a new frontier model every 44 days. OpenAI's launch a new one every 50 days. That's, 2 months. Lots of AI first companies that are really growing quickly. Seen that certainly apps move from 2 million to 4 million AR in 1 year. I think Cursor might be doing 500 million this year. They've been out. And these kind of AI first, truly native, and most of them are technical components being bought by other foundation labs, are certainly growing faster than we saw that even SaaS companies growing selling to other SaaS companies in the .com. Perform, adoption rose, but people still swing up. Um, OpenAI continues to be the leader. We see this in multiple different surveys. Although there was one recent survey that suggests that Anthropic may be gaining ground or maybe even have surpassed OpenAI in some of the corporate sectors. But it's I think kudos to OpenAI. They have started this whole wave and had tremendous pressure and lost a bunch of talent and screwed up a bunch of management and fired the CEO and brought him back and a whole bunch of distractions and paid out 16 billion to their employees. And despite all that, they continue to execute at an incredibly impressive pace, at least in my view. Big increase in the avatar and image generation and audio. A lot of familiar names: 11 Labs and Synthesia, Black Forest Labs. And I think unlike early days of the .com, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. So this is well into, major companies, whereas at least for folks like myself and others who lived at .com, you'd be talking breathlessly about a company, but they might be only $2 or $4 million. That was a company called OpenAI or Open Market, and we were supposed to be the e-commerce and Netscape of the East, and we went public on $2 million of revenue, which was considered hot there, but totally different landscape this year. Nathan is certainly claiming that GPT was actually the best model. It was clouded by a really poor launch. A lot of people, I think, believed the hype that this was going to be AGI. He's certainly arguing it's a brilliant model. Uh, Continued extraordinary, we see this everywhere, demand at inference time here. And the bottom right is a 50x increase that the CEO of Google was talking about. I forget where the show this was, or maybe it was their thing where they're now dealing with 480 trillion um, uh, tokens a month, and that's up 50x a year. One of the customers that uh, presented at our conference, Blue Blue Shield, they've also seen a 50x increase in token consumption. A lot of it due to the higher adoption, agents, which run all the time, and things like deep research here, which are using multiple agents. Obviously, models around coding, that's a sweet spot within the sweet spot within the sweet spot. I haven't seen a lot of people saying OpenAI is pulling ahead. I don't know if Alden or others believe that's the case. I guess this is a pulling ahead on some of the uh, software benchmarks.
Everybody I talk to says Codex is better than the current version of Claude Code, but I don't think there are that many people who think they're not far apart. They're very close, but
They're very close.
it's anecdotal, but I've talked to probably half a dozen coders who say Codex is unbelievable.
I like Codex because it's part of the GPT subscription, so you're not paying double.
So just all in one. It's even a good Swiss Army knife, and kudos to those because Claude Code and others had jumped out to such a massive lead.
And I understand Grok 4 Heavy is right up there as well. But I agree with Ian that having basically the unlimited usage that comes with your ChatGPT subscription is quite compelling.
And Adam, the Grok 4 Heavy, that's also has a code editing capability.
Well, Grok 4 Heavy is basically Grok 4, which is already really intelligent, but then spinning up 10 agents at once and them basically all deciding on what the best answers are. It's just a very, very deep reasoning model.
Yeah. That's great.
So it does code really well.
Yep. So vibe coding, we've been talking about a lot about this. So Lovable, Replit, and others. Um, that's right. Coders love Claude Code and Cursor, but who pays for all this? Um, Gross margins are generally commanded by the underlying model here. I think we don't have to get into this, but here, Replic's revenue is going to 200 million, and I think their gross margins for a while they were actually decreasing as the revenues were going up. Is there such a thing as profitable models? Are we there yet? It's a big question. Obviously, people are betting on. People asked about that for years for both Salesforce, Facebook, and um, Amazon. And they found enough investors to plow through those years and years and years of losses to get the scale effects, and now are dominant in their industry here. Browsers becoming the latest AI battleground. We're doing that now. 700 million weekly active users, ChatGPT. We've talked a lot about ChatGPT being the fifth most trafficked site, well above Twitter, Reddit, Wikipedia, and others. Here they've got the SEM Rush data shows a Google's global traffic fell 8%, 7.9% year over year. And we did see that come out one of the earnings calls. Was the first time, I think, in 20 years they'd ever seen a drop through some of the Apple channels. And AI search is merging as a high intent acquisition channel here. And Alden, I know you've been very articulate on this, and this also came through a lot of the other research we've been doing on the AEO to SEO to AEO here. But it really is, this whole notion that you have tools there that's getting into the intentionality of the user well before they get to the search is really powerful. Answer engines is the name that many of us prefer and like for this new things where you're going to get answers and not just the search results. We may also be moving to text engines or answer engines to text engines here. But data from these answer engines optimization company Profound, which I think raised $20 million, found that users treat AI answers differently. So these are kind of the single shot thing where you ask for, what's the best car dealership in Boston? It comes back with an answer rather than coming back with 6 or 8 blue links that are sponsored in the Google traditional world. Where do they get the answer? A lot of people don't know. We can continue to debate this. I think we're all learning this. And shift from mitigation. This is so. On the left is Time suing OpenAI for the use of AI and their songs for training and copy infringement. I guess these are all this. There's also, I don't know if it's in this one. There's also now lawsuits out there where companies are suing Google for the traffic fall. So I think in the other presentation we have, there's 2 or 3 companies now. They're also suing Google here. So this whole notion that you've got, these tech companies moving very quickly, both in sucking up copyrighted data to train their models, but then also really seeing material differences in the traditional 30-year click-through rate at Google or material, and people are responding with lawsuits. This got buried. A lot of people, Anthropic, and I think Tim, you were pretty articulate in this one in the news. Anthropic agreed to pay 1.5 billion to settle lawsuits from book authors that it read from. Largest payout in history of U.S. copyright. Massive continued build out of data centers, Stargate being one of them. OpenAI for countries or sovereign AI. And this whole notion that we're seeing more and more, at least attempts to go from hardware to models to even some cases hosting, both NVIDIA, Anthropic, or certainly NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI. And Tim, there's your Broadcom. continued at least breakup or challenging relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI. We've known in the news that OpenAI or Microsoft's also cut a deal with Anthropic. They're using, we're told, some of the code they got from Inflection, and also building their own code. So certainly some rumors that one of the reasons that OpenAI did such deals with Oracle is that they needed to get another big tech heavyweight in their corner, and they could no longer rely on Microsoft. I want to finish up here. Feeling getting way over here. Any other big key things that people saw out there? Unbelievable amount in these training centers. 5 gigabytes is just massive.
It's a great report, I thought.
Yeah.
You need an hour or two to really spend with it because it is hundreds of pages long. You can skim through some of it, but there's a lot of really good information. And to channel my inner Paul, it's breathtaking. The amount of activity there is across the board. Again, you sort of see it in dribs and drabs. I mean, when NVIDIA became the largest company by market cap in the world, everybody's like, wow, that's unbelievable. But then when you see the entire chip industry just completely on fire, even though NVIDIA, and they said this in the report, is still completely dominant, despite all the rest of this stuff, NVIDIA is still completely dominant. But the crumbs on the table are enough to displace Tesla from the Mag 7, right? That is what is astonishing, breathtaking, whatever your favorite hyperbole is. We'll see where it ends up. It's, again, we're a long ways from, $35 trillion in revenue or whatever, probably more than that they will need in order to pay for all this stuff. But, they're getting the investment, that's for sure.
Yeah. And Tim, I think this same group here, so this is a group of Gen AI, some professed Gen AI addicts. I'm certainly one of them. We meet, many of us, every single week, and not, a lot of us meet for over 400 daily calls or the news. We sit here a year ago in October, November, talk about this report. We're pretty optimistic it's change, and the amount that's happened, at least for me in the last 12 months, was up above
Yeah.
expectations. Usually it's kind of like, well, so it wasn't quite good, but GPT-5 will come out and, some kind of calibration, and it's exceeded almost every dimension.
Yeah, I think it's very different from the .com stuff in that sense, both because .com was a physical infrastructure build out. And while there is a physical infrastructure build out that's needed here to really keep going, it's really a software rollout, which is very quick. And the returns have been incredibly, you pointed out, these companies are already making, I mean, Anthropic and OpenAI alone, I think their combined revenues now are something like 20 billion or over 20 billion. That's just astonishing. That's larger than most companies ever get, right?
I mean, OpenAI will do 12 billion this year. Anthropic will do 7 billion this year. I mean,
Yeah, so almost 20 billion just between the two private company leaders, and the throw off revenue to Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and the rest. It's just, so this isn't sock puppets and let's just go get eyeballs. And it doesn't have to wait for an enormous infrastructure build out. A lot of the infrastructure is already here, so you can do a lot already. So to me, that's a huge difference. The fact that there's already economic return because the rollout is so fast, and the fact that there is a good bit of infrastructure already in place. It'll be interesting to see how like the Middle East does here, because they have a lot of cash and they're going to get a lot of chips. And so there's all these other things going on, but they will take some time to change the world.
Before we go with David here, Tim, just remind folks who live through the .com. Remember, we started with 14.4 modems, went to 28. There was cable modems, and all the phones didn't have internet access. So many countries didn't have it. And now we've got, global access.
Right. And even, those of us who helped bring Wi-Fi about, Wi-Fi was originally very difficult and very flaky and very slow. So, so there weren't any wireless options. Everything, and there were no phone options at all. There was no data over phone. So yeah, everything had to be wired. yeah, just, hundreds of billions of miles of fiber optic cable had to be laid. It just takes a long time for all that to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead, David, then we'll go to John.
Yeah, just a very quick addition to what I was saying before when I said I felt like a failure, and you were saying, relative to other people. What I feel like is I'm walking on an Indy 500 racetrack, and anytime I'm walking rather than driving the car, I feel like I'm screwing up somehow. That's sort of that's sort of the analogy. Does that
In terms
make
of
you?
like, falling behind or missing something? Or-
Just yes, but I'm watching cars go past at 500 miles an hour, and when I have a task where I'm walking the
Oh,
task,
yeah.
I just feel viscerally in a way that's very unusual. Like I'm not complaining about the tool or anything or what anyone else is doing. I just feel like I have personally failed to get into the car. It's a very strange feeling, but it happens over many different areas all the time now. It's
No.
like a daily experience. It's very strange.
And I don't think it's going to slow down, David.
No,
I think
no,
a year from now, we're going to be doing the same
I
things
agree with you. I'm glad I can still see the cars moving.
again. Yeah. Go ahead, John, and then Alexander.
Yeah, I think one of the things when people talk about the return on investment on AI, I think you got to take a few things into account. First of all, the mega scalers, Microsoft creates just under $2 billion of EBITDA a week. And so these hyperscalers, even if they don't make any money on retail, they'll make it in a decrease in the cost of software production and research, period. So they continue to spend billions and billions, even if the consumer market is a total bust, which it won't be. Second thing is that Chinese are already doing it. You're going to see a massive subsidy from the government, direct and indirect, into AI because it's so central, just the way we had with hydrocarbons and rockets and interstate commerce, because it's so central to defense policy. So I think, and the last but not least, it drives me nuts when people say, oh, not everybody's going to make money here. Yeah, that's the nature of investing. Some people lose money. Anyway, just in the conversation, I think it's about return. Those are going to be big factors.
And John, before we go, just also to highlight, in the early days of internet, we didn't have a 6-month strike like we did in LA. And the early days of internet, we didn't have it profoundly changing wars like it is right now.
Well,
So,
you didn't have in the early days of the internet, you didn't have the wealthiest companies in the world who are wealthier than any company that's ever been on the planet and have more power than all but a couple nation states, looking at 30 to 40% of the cost of goods sold being decreased by 10, 15, 20, 30% in the context of that. I mean, these are flows of capital that are larger than all but a couple of countries.
that's a great thing. Go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, I think they mentioned it briefly in the State of AI presentation, but I see it coming to light more now with like banking services, especially with Claude and even OpenAI hiring people from the banking sector. And I think that that's going to be something that's going to really kind of turn up in the next probably like 6 months, where we're going to see a lot of job loss in that banking sector. Also, one more thing here, as far as they mentioned it briefly, I think last week, but with Gemini, I guess 3 it is, they're going to have Genie 3 as well, and they mentioned that in the presentation as well. Like video games basically being able to be prompted, and I think that that's also going to be a way for a lot of people to like maybe possibly train robots, is like through world models, maybe not necessarily through Genie 3, but through world models. And I think that that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And also the fact that we're going to see, maybe the video game industry maybe collapse as well, with Genie 3 and other video kind of game world models using that.
That's great. Well, the last few minutes here, let's make any predictions for the next 12 months. Is closed still going to be better than open source? Is OpenAI going to get toppled? Is small models going to be the rage?
I don't think open source is going to take over anytime in the near future. The mega scalers are the distribution mechanism. And so unless they take on and become, people may be familiar with Red Hat. Red Hat was what made Linux acceptable to the data center. Linux was around forever. Even after all the Unixes got combined, it was still around for a long time before it became an acceptable purchase. And it was the building of a big company that said, I will take the risk out and support you and install these things and do everything you need, that made it acceptable. And then it was the hyperscalers, when they came into being, taking those Red Hat servers and Linux servers that made it acceptable to corporations. So right now, I think they're all lined up behind closed models and they're making a lot of money. And they have absolutely only Meta has the incentive and has gone open source. And they could be a factor, but they don't seem to be right now. So I think people always underestimate distribution in getting things out to customers and particularly corporations that are risk adverse. So
What
I
about
don't see
free?
that much happening.
What about DeepSeek and free, Tim?
I don't think people care. They're already paying. They're going to pay. A lot of US corporations, large corporations, will not use any Chinese model. It's just a policy. And I just don't think they care. They would rather, if they're a Microsoft shop, if they're an AWS shop, which is probably 85+% of all significant corporate entities, certainly in the United States, it's a trivial amount of money to add this stuff compared to doing something, unless a Microsoft or an Amazon says we will support DeepSeek the same way we will support OpenAI or Anthropic or our models. I haven't seen any of that yet. Could happen, but I haven't seen it.
Todd Lifbro, I know you're comment about Galloway. I saw that his presentation as well. Do you want to share that? I thought it was really intriguing assertion. Are you able to unmute, Todd?
Yeah, I'm just unmuting. Yeah, it's interesting. He does on his show with Kara Swisher. She asked him for a prediction, and he's always has an interesting take on things. And he basically said if he was China, essentially, he would release free open source AI models because so much of US economic growth and market value right now depends on 7 AI companies. So the single best thing you could do to take down the US economy would be essentially to price AI at zero. And it gets you thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes and no, though. I would
And-
push that
and
back
it-
because
yeah,
again, you're going to have to, the cost of Linux is free, right? The cost of Linux is not the software. The cost of Linux is the support and the risk management. And that's not going to go away. And Microsoft and AWS are still going to be the primary providers of that, in my opinion. Whatever the underlying software is, maybe it'll be DeepSeek or some free version, but it's not going to matter.
But
It'll
certainly,
matter to OpenAI.
Yeah.
You still need the electricity and the power to generate all these things, though. So
Correct. Another bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, although China has put 50% of the solar in the world was done in China last year. So,
It's a big advantage China
going
has.
backwards to
Huge
gas.
advantage
Yeah.
that they have.
Gas,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they're running toward lower cost renewable. Solar is now cheaper than gas. So
They're also
I do
building
think can't count China out on this stuff.
They're also building 350 small nukes in the next 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mobile. I think Qualcomm's going to do some deal with one of the big guys. I think 2026 is going to be small models, mobile, maybe network together, and that whole. I think I don't know who exactly is going to benefit from a stock basis, but it's going to be. And then the Chinese are going to be in the middle of that as well. And then it's going to be really interesting stuff in Europe about they use the Chinese models with small and medium sized models on the phones, which are very good. We do use the American ones. It's going to get. I think mobile's going to be huge.
I think we'll continue to see massive change with this AEO change. I think we're going to see more e-commerce purchasing there. But we're at time. Any other bold predictions people want to put on the record? This is being recorded. Go ahead, David.
I would say that, and this is going to be very abstract, that people will think of, we've already talked about AI not being thought of as much as a tool, but I still don't think people are really treating it in as open a way as it may become. Like I think that, for example, people are mostly using it to duplicate art forms that already exist more quickly and more effectively, rather than thinking about what kind of really new art forms is allowed and made possible. And I think that area of things, I don't think it's just in art. I think one way of thinking about it is we have an alien life form, and where that ends up, how that all falls out in terms of how our culture is not just an economic question. It's a much deeper one than that.
Yeah. Well, fabulous discussion as usual. Let's keep the learning going.